Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our viewers. My name is Ben Hillary, Managing Director of Commodities People, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined here today by Ian Murrin, CEO of Digiterre. Now, for those who don't know them, Digiterre is a software and data engineering consultancy who work with many of the leading and most innovative firms across the energy and commodity trading sector. So, Ian, welcome. Huge thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you all for joining. It is a great pleasure. I look forward to our chat.
Excellent. Well, diving right in, first question, Ian, as somewhat of an industry veteran, how would you summarize the evolution of the energy and commodity trading digital landscape in the last 20 or so years?
Good question. I think one can characterize it by obviously increased digitization. And in the early stages, it was about building systems that brought together, if you like, repositories of information. I won't even go to say data, but repositories of information to allow the trading life cycle to happen, to streamline some of those workflows, and to give traders and sometimes risk people just better information to make those decisions. But they were very much making the decisions. And those decisions were still, I think, very much human decisions based on the evidence and data and the reports and the analytics they had available at the time, which were a small subset of what we see now. So I think the broader point here is that we're seeing a massively increased usage of data and using data to drive decision making. So at its, I suppose, most elegant expression is automated trading, where the machines are making decisions and acting upon those. And there are mid-grounds where organizations are becoming much more data-driven in their decision-making, but people are using that information, which is more complete, more encompassing, to make decisions themselves. And in some cases, those decisions are, if you like, machine-supported, but we're seeing increasing percentages of markets and of some organizations trading activity. One, for example, in the gas market, one client of ours, where over 50% of their trading activity is now being done in an automated sense.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot more of that.
And which technology areas are you most excited about? What tools and approaches do you see trading firms as being really most able to utilize to secure real competitive advantage?
Yeah, another very good question, Ben. Thank you. I think everyone's getting pretty excited about Gen AI. It's in a sense the new buzzword,
Mm.
but what's relevant about that to me is if you go back to the origins of that, it goes back to Google, a team within Google generating a tool called Transformer. And the original insight was that if you're trying to translate from language A to language B, at the time, all translation engines were using one word at a time translation. And the net result is, and I'm no linguist, but you would end up getting very poor translations because the context of the conversation, of the word within a sentence, within a paragraph, was missed from the point of view of the machine. So the Google Transformer engine was designed to create context.
Mm.
So it wouldn't look at a word, it would look at a sentence, broadly speaking, and say, what's it trying to say? How do we translate that? Now, most of us who go to a foreign country, especially if you are like me, linguistically incapable, and you might use a Google Translate, it comes up with a phenomenally good translation.
Mm.
Now, if you look at that in the context of, I'll say Gen AI, it could be ChatGPT or any other um, large language model type generation. What they're very good at is the context because of that sort of contextual understanding and thinking. So if you think about traders and you think about the problem of making money in the markets, there is an awful lot of knowledge and contextual understanding required, particularly in our marketplace, where you've got both, if you like, the financial component of a trade and the logistics, the physical universe aspects of it. LNG trade, it's got to go from A to got to go to B. It's going to have, loss of gas along the way, etc. So having machines which can actually get context and start to approximate to a human being's understanding is going to be phenomenally powerful, in my opinion. So I don't think it's going to take over the life of a trader or a quant in its entirety at all. Not anytime soon. But I think the ability to enrich and augment that thinking, that decision making, that analytics from a both a technical perspective, as in market technical, but also a managerial perspective, I think will be extraordinary. Now, underpinning all of that is still data. So what this does is it re-emphasizes the importance of understanding and engineering the data pipelines and reservoirs of an organization so that the quality is superb and the quantity of generation of ingestion validation is sufficient to support an ever increasing speed and shortening of time cycles. So to me, that's probably the most interesting thing from our perspective, but I think from our clients' perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming up quite shortly in September, actually, at Energy Trading Week, you will be showcasing a really fascinating case study on how innovation can be best applied to energy markets of the future. Could you just provide us with a very brief overview of the key areas you're going to be covering and really what you hope technology leaders will take away from it?
Absolutely, yeah. So the key areas we're going to cover, probably the four of them. First is we're going to be examining, possible characteristics of the energy markets of the future. And coming back to this point about data, the markets respond to the way organized participants play in that space. So an increasing role for automation and for machine learning type applications to perform the trading, that affects the markets. And conversely, regulation, whereby, for example, timeframes for power auctions are coming down. They already have come down, but they might end up being, near real-time timeframes for bidding. So we're going to examine some of those characteristics. Secondly, mastering the challenge of inconsistent data and information elements, which are core to these organizations. So, for example, synchronizing weather, consumption and generation, and then price expectations, which is essential for modeling and valuation across the market. And that's not a trivial set of problems there. Also fostering kind of an end-to-end view of these value streams, which are underpinned by data streams, and the skills required to do that, because there is, if you like, an implicit skilling up of all of us in the marketplace in one form or another, be it technologists around the data requirements necessary to surface to the business, and business people around the considerations for data and technology necessary to service them. So that's coming together. So if you look at number 4, I'd say it's around the building of trading platforms, and particularly the IT infrastructure in the broader sense. That's hardware and software necessary to continuously integrate data, valuations, and support the orchestration of connected models. So the challenge here is that the energy markets have typically been, or at least the trading applications supporting it, have typically been non-real time, often batch. So most ETRMs were built as a batch application. Whereas if you look at the financial market space, where we do an awful lot of our work as well, they have been near real time or real time, certainly low latency applications in our FX practice, for example. And now we're seeing a demand for taking that low latency capability and building entire trading infrastructures around low latency, near real time or even real time trading activities. And as the markets, particularly power, go down to smaller and smaller time slices, you can see these worlds coming together. But that creates quite a load on your technologists and your infrastructure, because your data has to be therefore real time or near real time. And you are bringing together lots of different data sources. If you're trying to do micro forecasts for the prediction of wind and solar in a given area, and then use that to bid on the next auction time slice and then produce on that. And you're doing that over a very distributed renewables estate. It's a challenge business-wise, and it's a technology challenge. So it's certainly not insurmountable, but it is a challenge to bring that together in harmony with the needs of the business. So we see a lot of that going on, and we're being asked to help people design and build those low latency trading infrastructures.
Yeah, excellent. It's just amazing how much everything's developed in the last few years, isn't it? Would you imagine these kind of challenges a decade ago?
Well, I think one could sort of foresee that might happen. As you're trying to predict, if you ever apply static analysis to a dynamic environment, you always fail. So you're trying to predict where the shells will land when the land is moving underneath you. And what comes across here is you've got regulatory demands. Obviously, we've seen incredible changes in the markets over the last year due to the Ukraine war, and that drives investment in renewables, and therefore the imperative is to make those renewables investments work from a commercial and financial perspective. And that then drives a lot of thought and investment into things like asset optimization across renewables and in many cases non-renewables, because organizations have the entire estate. And they're quite challenging things to do because you have an operational
Yeah.
factor in the energy commodity space that you don't have in FX. You've
Mm.
got refineries to run in oil. You've got shipment of that around logistics, and then you've got generating assets which you turn on and off and have real schedules for maintenance, etc., etc. That makes it both challenging but also super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess my final question would be, earlier this year, Digiterre won the leading strategic and technology advisory group at the Commodity Trading Awards 2023. So huge congratulations to you and the team on that. Why do you believe Digiterre won this? Essentially, what's the view from your clients of the Digiterre secret sauce?
Very good question. I mean, I'd encourage you to go and talk to them, Ben, to get a full answer. But as we talk to them ourselves extensively, I think the simplicity is this: there are many participants who do a very good job of, I'll call it pure consulting. So the idea that they are going to talk to clients, understand the client's problem, and propose an approach to that problem at, I would argue, a relatively theoretical level. It doesn't mean it has no validity; it does, but it's a strategic level. And then on the other end of the extreme, if you take software development houses, and we are very firmly in the software delivery arm of things,
Yeah.
you've got plenty of offshore players who can give you bodies at a very low price, and some nearshore players, and you've got in-house teams. But the real value in a world where it is complex and ever changing, and that complexity involves technical in the sense of software technical, as well as hardware technical, if you're moving to the cloud, for example, but more importantly, business domain technical, very deep and very specific. And finally, let's call it ways of working to create the change that you want to see. So if you build it, will they come is always the question. And the answer is almost invariably no, unless you build it involving them, whoever them are, them being the users. So our model is to combine three things. It is the technology capability, and that is in one sense down to whether it's Java or .NET, doesn't really matter, but what technologies will solve that problem, and how do we know they'll solve that problem? Because you've got to prove it through working through it, not just an assumption. You've got to apply it. So that could be a proof of concept, a technical spike, to say, I think I can connect this data source to this data source, but until I've done it, I don't know. That's the first thing, great technology. The second, which is we bring in, and most in our space don't, is domain knowledge. So unlike an organization who is really a strategic consultancy, we do not claim to be the domain experts. That's not our point. But we do have a lot of domain knowledge to bring to the party, having spent nearly 25 years doing this. And the combination of domain knowledge with specific technology capability is very, very powerful, because you look at the art of the possible as well as what's pragmatic. And then the final point, which are core ways of working, variously people think about agile, it gets a bad rep now, but really agile is a way of iteratively, not just solving a problem, but coming to understand what problem you're solving. So at the coalface, if you're the miner at the coalface, you know more about that coalface than anyone at the top of the shaft in the management office. So if you combine all three of those, you have, as you put it, secret sauce. You have a magic around knowing more about that specific subdomain than anyone else on earth. And you apply the technology and the ways of working to try and solve it. And you might fail, you might succeed, more likely it's somewhere in between, rinse, repeat until you succeed. And by doing that and surfacing value very quickly and early to your stakeholders, you are able to get contact with the real world and feedback from real people. And that is how you deliver faster than anybody else. So that broadly is why people seem to like working with us, is it's contact with the real world, surface value early, get feedback quickly and rapidly and frequently, rinse, repeat, until you've manifestly solved that problem.
Excellent. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end. So, yeah, really a huge thanks, Ian, for a very interesting conversation. And And yeah, if any of our viewers have any questions for Ian or myself, do find us on LinkedIn, drop us a line, or see us at Energy Trading Week in late September. But until then, thank you, Ian. Thank you, listeners, and have a good rest of day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.